It's fine. Keep going. Right.
Okay. So basically, with all gaited horses, you have a movement here that's moving disjointly from the movement there. The plantation horses were basically Tennessee Walkers. The horse Traveler, the famous horse Traveler that General Lee rode into the Civil War, was a plantation horse. So in the final surrender statement of General Lee to the Union armies, he only had 2 written in requirements. Number 1, his men retained their arms so they could feed their family, their
And
gun.
he kept his horse.
Number 2, I get to keep my horse.
Okay.
All the other generals that served under him lost multiple horses during the Civil War. One of them had 18 horses shot out from under him during the Civil War.
Wow.
General Lee, who was very active and with his men, rode the same horse the entire war.
Wow.
So that tells you what kind of horse he was. And a lot of horses came from that horse. He was bred to a lot of mares because he was so popular. So those horses, after the Civil War, the men got their guns back, their country was destroyed, slavery was gone, they had to reinvent themselves. They moved into the Ozark Mountain for cheap land and to kind of get away from it, leave it all behind. And they took with them these plantation horses, which they're pretty proud of. But as soon as they got into that broken terrain, they realized that a horse that walks behind and trots on the front has his forward movement compelling him to find footing with his front feet as fast as he can, because that big lick from behind is pushing the horse forward, and he just has to hunt for rocks and step over logs. They trip, and to this day, if you ever ride a Tennessee Walker, they stumble a lot in broken terrain. So the Ozark people weren't stupid. They said, hey, we can keep that same disjoint movement, creating the X. As I was explaining, this moves independent of that, and you sit in the middle. So that X creates that smooth movement. What they said is, let's breed them so that they do it exactly opposite. So a Missouri Foxtrotter walks in front and he trots behind. That gives him more time to put his feet down. And the trotting behind is just catching up with that big lick walk in the front. So when you watch a Foxtrotter, if you go back to Missouri and buy horses from those old hillbillies, they'll tell you it should sound like this: chunk of meat and 2 potatoes, chunk of meat and 2 potatoes, chunk of meat and 2 potatoes. And when you ride them, if you start to hear that rhythm, you know that that horse is moving the way they want him to. Now, little known truth, foxtrot is not the best movement that a foxtrotter does. Running walk is. A running walk is the smoothest movement a horse can make, and it doesn't matter what breed. If it's a gaited Morgan, a Tennessee Walker, even a Pasifino, a foxtrotter, you're looking for that running walk, for a using gait, something that's comfortable to ride. That's that smooth, floaty feeling. The actual technical judged foxtrotter that Ava, Missouri wants to see involves a lot of head bobbing. They want the head bob, they want the ear shake, and they want that horse to be moving just like that. Big walk, trotting behind. That's not the smoothest movement. And for a guy that's going to enjoy the mountains and trails, you want to encourage that running walk. It's just a rolling movement that's just very smooth, very fluid. So you take a horse that's bred like this, and you try to groove him. All gaited horses, they may be born gaited, but that doesn't mean they know their gears. And so it's like a piece of sandstone. If you scratch in the same place repeatedly, the groove gets deeper. So when you ride a horse and you hit that sweet spot that you want to groove the running walk. As soon as he hits it, you hold him there. If he drops below it, you beat him up. If he goes ahead of it, you hold him back. So you're spurring up and bringing him back, keeping him round, keeping him supple, and keeping him collected as he moves. And you get it to where he knows to hit that lick and go. And back there they call it hitting a lick. That means when he hits that spot that you'll like, he'll go to town, he'll travel all day that way. If a horse slips in and out of gears, kind of like a truck that won't stay in any particular gear, it's what they call trashy. If a guy says he has a trashy gait, that means he has gait, but he's just all over the place. He'll be galloping, then walking, then foxtrotting, then running. Some of them are good, some of them are bad, but you can't count on any of them. It makes it really uncomfortable to ride. Just like in dressage, cadence is first and last. Gaucher, the guy who invented dressage, said impulsion first and last. It was the same thing. You want to create forward movement that is consistent. And if a horse is galloping at a cadence, that means he's galloping, but it's all rhythmic. He's not, going too fast and too slow. That's something that the human on top can count on. So you're judging your movement, and it's just like surfing. If you were hitting waves and bouncing around, you'd fall off. You try to get it so that you can count on the movement Angle your body and ride the motion of the wave. With horses, it's a little bit that way because the horse is moving fast forward, and you kind of lean into it as you go, and you reach this sweet spot, kind of the eye of the storm. There's a lot happening in the front with the big walk. There's a lot happening behind with the trot, and you're sitting there in the eye of all this movement, hoping to accomplish peace. You want tranquility. You want to see the trail and just have this chug of meat, that horse just hustling along. When you get that and you groove them in and the horse matures under a good hand and skilled rider, you have this really wonderful thing. Too often though, people get horses that have a lot of energy and are bred to be a rock star. They get trashy and they say, gosh, I've got a gaited horse, but I don't like riding him. He's too hot, he's too screwed up. So that's really the it of it, is you get them. The best thing to do is move them away from home, get them tired, get them in deep sand, get them on a slight downhill, very slight downhill coming towards home, and start to groove those gaits and make him go a long way and groove him. He'll get what they call muscle memory. That's where he knows, just like a guy that can shoot 3-pointers all day long, he knows that movement. He doesn't have to think about it. It's just automatic. You get a horse that gets hot. Muscles are very plastic, and so when they get hot, if they accomplish a certain movement, grooving it, and then as they cool down, you've heard of cooling out a horse as you bring him home. You don't want to bring him too hot home and then give him a cold drink. As you cool them down, you hold them in that gait. So basically, as those hot muscles contract, they're going to find a shape. That's what creates muscle memory. That shape of that muscle, where it becomes strong, where it becomes loose, is what allows them to drop right into that gait. And so after you accomplish that gait, then you say, I'm going to move on to a canter. Well, it's a different set of muscles that makes a horse canter. You have to build the loin muscle, because the loin muscle picks the front end of the horse up. So you'll go to sand. I use sand because it causes them to work harder, and you canter them for hours. You canter them as far as they'll go. Give them a good break, bring them back, canter them as far as they can go. Then you bring them home and you cool them at that canter and you put them up. If you do that for a little while, you'll get a horse that can hit a canter perfectly, hit a running walk perfectly, hit a foxtrot perfectly. When you get the gears you want, and you don't have to do it by anybody's rule book. Believe me, I'm the rule breakingest guy in the world, but I do it in such a way that my client, if I'm training a horse, gets exactly what they want. And the guys I've trained for years say, make this horse run and walk. That's what I want. I'm a hunter, I'm a trailsman, I love a good saddle horse. They don't want a foxtrot, they want to run and walk. Or they'll say, build him a good canter that I can just go miles on Antelope Island at a nice canter. I'd like that in there. They may request something else, and I develop those gaits,
Interesting.
put it into their horse. And, you know, the horse's soul is found in the work. So whatever you're accomplishing, the horse is getting broke, and you find out who that guy is at the end of long, hard days. There is no substitute for wet saddle blankets. There's no substitute for experience. That horse, you know, you can't go in. Most trainers, they go and they give them a half hour here, an hour in an arena. You can't get to the soul of a saddle horse in that kind of time. It takes hours, sometimes the whole weekend, to get into their head, and that's when you find out whether he's good or not. Now, this horse, you know, we've heard some horror stories about how his energy is kind of counterproductive for getting someone to enjoy riding him. It could be that there's a lot of water there that just hasn't been channeled. We don't know. He could be a little bit of a nut. A lot of Missouri Traveler descendants are just a little cuckoo, but in the right hands, it's the best horse they ever had. So we'll just see what he's got under the hood. Right now, he's just a question mark, but in a month, we'll know all there is to know about him, and then we can make recommendations. I've got a lot of people who would like to buy the horse if he's trustworthy, and pretty much no one who wants to buy him if he's not.
Yep.
So, you know, best thing to do is